La ciudad si respiraba en el sofocante air de una tarde noche de verano, su pulso una mezcla de llanas serenas y en silencio la risa. En el corazón de la ciudad laberinto, Mara se situa en el abrir de la ventana de su apartamento, con el frío cristal de debajo de las yemas de los dedos de puesto a tierra, en una realidad quasi sencha extranjero y desarticulada. El miro a cabo en el neón brilla la pintura de las calles más abajo, los colors vibrants de fusión, en un caleidoscopio de la vida que contrasta claramente con la caótica confusión de elaboración de la cerveza dentro de ella. Mara reflexión miro a su espalda, una mujer atrapada entre las expectativas de sus meticulosamente diseñado vida y el fuego lento deseos de quesas guerras en su pensamiento. Con raven cabello en cascada por sus hombros y en ajustado vestido negro, abrazando a su curvas, encarnaba un encanto peligroso, una serena que se esconde detrás del velo de normalidad. Sin embargo, detrás de esos perfectos ojos de esmeraldas poner una tempestad de nostalgia, un sentimiento de dolor por algo más que la predicción de los días y noches vachas marcada por la incesante tic-tac de su reloj. La tensión en su pecho, que se profundizó cuando un coche rugió pasado, un destello de luces iluminando la habitación y la proyección de sombras que bailaban a lo largo de las paredes como espectros. Ella temboraleó sus dedos contra el alféizar, la mente de caras. Esta noche marcó el final de la reunión de la sociedad velvet, clandestino circulo de privilegio y de poder donde los secretos en el que la monda, y los deseos retorcidos en tumultuoso asuntos.
Las sombras se aferro a la mara como una segunda piel, sinuosas y acogedor. Ella cerró la ventana, amortiguar la ciudad de la canción de la serena, como el ruido ambiental se desvanció. La cal de abajo lecha con vida, un mundo vibrante de la contradicción a la agitación, que se retorce en su núcleo. Ella tiró de su mirada desde el caleidoscopio de luces de colors, que se agigaban, en el verano de humedad, y pasaba a la luz tenue de las esquinas de su sala de estar. El air dentro de filtro grueso, casi eléctrico, como si se carga con los secretos que no había sido. Las paredes de pulsos con su latido, cada golpe recordando su desesperado anhelo de batido en el interior. Habían pasado 2 semanas, desde que aparentemente inocuo encuentro con Adrián. Su intensa mirada han atormentado sus sueños, los que se ahogan en un mar de forma espontánea deseos. Él se había deslizado en su vida, como las sombras de sí mismas, tanto seductor y peligroso. Ella recordaba el camino que él había enredado lleno de maldad, sin embargo, un indicio de algo más oscuro al acecho debajo de la superficie. El momento en que él había caminado lejos de ella, se había sentido terror de un hilo tenso, entre ellos, como si invisibles zarcillos de destino torcido alrededor de su corazón. Mara sacudió la cabeza, empujando a un lado los recuerdos que con guerras en ella. Ella necesitaba de enfoque para explorar esta parte inesperada de sí misma que Adrián había despertado. El ambiente se sentía opresivo, el silencio ensordecedor. Con un determinado suspiro, ella se deslizó en el cuarto de baño, con el frío de las baldosas bajo sus pies desnudos de puesto a tierra de ella en medio de la tempestad interior. De pie ante el espejo, ella examinó la reflexión mirando a su espalda.
Mara reclined on her plush green velvet couch, draped in the ambient glow of scattered candlelight. The flickering flames danced, casting playful shadows across her skin, which shimmered like polished porcelain. Thoughts raced in her mind, swirling amidst the anticipation that thrummed in her veins. The late hour nudged her toward recklessness, urging her to face the source of her torment, the intoxicating and unyielding pull toward her neighbor Elias. Weeks had passed since they exchanged their first hesitant words, and since that moment, an inescapable tension had settled between them, a silent acknowledgment of something forbidden. He embodied a magnetism she couldn't ignore, a raw energy that ignited heated dreams and sleepless nights. They shared the same thin walls, echoes of laughter and moody music escaping into the void, stirring a desire that was both thrilling and terrifying. She remembered the way his eyes had glinted, stormy and haunting, in those brief encounters, as if there was something dark within him that mirrored her own long-buried desires. And yet there remained a chasm of hesitation, a silent agreement to maintain their distance, until tonight. Sensing the hour growing late, a deep breath steadied her. She launched herself from the soft embrace of her couch, urgency propelling her now. With deliberate intention, she edged toward her window, the light from her room painting her silhouette against the glass. Outside, the city pulsed with a life that felt distant, yet tantalizing in its proximity. Mara's heart raced as she caught sight of Elias standing on his balcony. Cloaked in shadows, he leaned against the railing, the dim light softening his features, making him appear almost ethereal. His dark hair fluttered in the night breeze, and the hem of his black shirt clung to his sculpted frame. Mara stood in front of her full-length mirror, the dim light casting a soft glow on her reflection. The remnants of the day clung to her, the scent of jasmine lingered in her hair, mixed with the musk of the warm summer air. She wore a flowy, dark lavender slip that clung to her curves, the fabric whispering against her skin as she moved. There was a glow about her, an unspoken allure that radiated from within, ignited by the anticipation that thrummed in her veins. Tonight the air was electric with possibility. With every passing second, the urge to peek through her curtains and glimpse Elias standing on his balcony grew stronger. It had been days since their last encounter, days filled with longing and frustration. The memory of that stolen glance under the flickering streetlights haunted her, an echo of what lay just out of reach. Poised on the precipice of something forbidden, she felt caught between desire and duty, her heart racing at the thought of crossing that invisible line. Her fingers brushed the silk fabric as she traced her collarbone, feeling the thrum of life beneath her skin. It was as though the world outside her window was holding its breath, waiting for her to make a move. There he was, the man who ignited a storm within her, a tempest of thoughts unfit for the daylight. Elias Tower, an enigma, wrapped in strength and allure, welcomed and repelled her with the same intensity. With each heartbeat, she could feel the pull tightening like a noose around her neck. She shook her head, trying to dispel the thoughts that climbed the walls of her mind, the shadows of fear that danced at the edges of her consciousness. Recklessness weaved through her like a warm rush of liquor. Maybe tonight, she thought, she could finally surrender to the hunger that whispered to her. Mara turned toward the balcony, her heart fluttering like a moth drawn to light. Mara's heart raced as she positioned herself in front of the mirrored glass. The reflection that stared back felt both alien and intimately familiar, a woman on the precipice of a terrifying leap into the unknown. She brushed her fingers over the delicate lace along the neckline of her slip, ghosting down her collarbone. The fabric clung to her skin, almost like a lover's touch, and she inhaled sharply at the sensations coursing through her. Tonight was no ordinary night. The heaviness in the air seemed to whisper promises of revelation as she prepared for the unveiling of secrets that had simmered just beneath the surface of her daily life. The walls around her were thick with silence, thick with expectation. A knock echoed through her apartment, deep and resonant, stirring the tension that enveloped her. With hesitant steps, she approached the door, her breath shallow and quick. Turning the brass knob, she opened it to reveal Elias, a silhouette against the dim glow of the hallway. His dark hair framed his face, providing a striking contrast to the pale light. He wore fitted black trousers and a white shirt rolled up at the sleeves, a look of calculated casualness infused with an edge of raw, untamed energy. His voice slid over her skin like silk, igniting the flame that flickered within her. "Elias," she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. The air between them crackled with unspoken desires and the weight of their shared histories. "Can I come in?" he asked, his gaze piercing through her, searching deep into her very soul. Mara's breath caught as she heard a soft knock on her door. Each sound resonated in the stillness of her apartment, like a bell tolling the arrival of a long-awaited fate. The anticipation coiled in her stomach, a heady mixture of eagerness and dread. She hesitated, hovering for one last moment in front of the mirror, where her reflection stared back, the enchanting stranger she'd become. With a final deep breath, she turned toward the door, her heart racing in sync with the urgency of the moment. As she opened the door, the world beyond blurred into nothingness. There he stood, Elias, the man whose presence had seeped into every corner of her mind, igniting thoughts that danced along the edge of danger. The darkness of the evening enveloped him, leaving only the contours of his strong jaw, and the arch of his brow highlighted under the dim glow of her candlelight. "Mara," he breathed, the single syllable laced with a mix of longing and uncertainty. His eyes, deep and stormy, held a weight that seemed to pull her closer, rendering her breathless. "Elias," she managed to say, almost ironically surprised at the steadiness of her own voice. She stepped aside, silently inviting him in, the tantalizing scent of sandalwood and musk wavering in the air in his wake. As he stepped over the threshold, she marveled at how an act as simple as opening a door could feel like the crossing of a forbidden boundary. The space felt charged, alive. She caught a glimpse of his rugged silhouette against the soft illumination, and an urge to explore his secrets clawed at her. The air thickened with unspoken promises, and a familiar tension wound itself tightly around them, an embrace that only deepened the more they shared glances. "What brings you here so late?" she asked, feigning nonchalance, a dangerous dance between temptation and reserve. Mara opened the door to find Thorn standing there, cloaked in shadows and secrets. His presence was a dark riddle, eyes glimmering like twin embers against the subdued lighting of her apartment. The rush of night air swept in with him, laden with the scent of rain, a familiar fragrance that ignited memories of stolen glances and hushed words. "Are you ready?" His voice was deep, husky, tugging at her core like gravity. The anticipation between them felt palpable, a rope pulled taut and stretching toward the inevitable. She nodded, unable to speak. The weight of the world slipped away, replaced by a dizzying sense of liberation. Thorn stepped over the threshold, his presence filling the small space with an intensity that made the air hum. Time still, the outside world fading as he moved closer, closing the distance that had felt both electrifying and terrifying since they first met. "Your heart races," he noted, a smirk playing on his lips. "Do you fear me, Mara?" "Not fear," she replied, her voice a whisper laced with defiance. "Desire." His smirk deepened, wicked and alluring. "Then let's see how deep that desire runs." He took her hand, enveloping it in his larger warm grasp. Mara felt the electric jolt travel up her arm, sending tingles cascading through her body. They stepped into the street, the moonlight draping over them like a silken veil. Mara felt imbued with newfound courage, a wild determination fueled by the wicked thrill of the unknown. Southward, they meandered through winding alleys and cobblestone streets, the city pulsating around them. There was a rhythm to their journey, a heartbeat that synced with the desires echoing between them. The shadows danced as if encouraging their steps, wrapping them in an embrace that felt both thrilling and dangerous. "I should warn you," Thorn said, breaking the silence between them. Mara's heart pounded like a relentless drum as she stepped aside to let Thorn into her sanctuary. The air between them crackled with an intensity that left her breathless. He closed the door softly behind him, the noise echoing like a secret whispered between conspirators. The shadows danced around him, revealing a perfectly tailored suit that hugged his form in all the right places, but it was his gaze, dark, hungry, and unwavering, that held her captive. "Ready?" he repeated, his tongue laced with a tantalizing mix of challenge and invitation. She drew a shaky breath, her pulse quickening. "I was born ready," Mara replied, injecting a confidence she didn't quite feel. Thorn stepped closer, invading her personal space, and the heat radiating from him sent a shiver of excitement down her spine. "Then let's begin." With a nod, she led him deeper into her apartment, to the small alcove she had set up for their meeting. An ornate table laden with half-burnt candles and shimmering crystals stood at the center, a makeshift altar to their dark desires. Books stacked haphazardly about the room told tales of occult magic and forbidden love, their spines worn, inked with secrets from other lifetimes. Mara felt the weight of history pressing down upon her, intensifying the air of mystery and danger that swirled around them. As she settled across from him, their knees nearly touching, she felt the electric connection between them. The flickering candlelight cast shadows that played across his face, highlighting his sharp features and the slight curl of his lips, an enigmatic smile that hinted at mischief, but also danger. "Tonight," Thorn said, his voice low and purposeful, "we delve deeper. Are you prepared for the truth?" Mara licked her lips, suddenly aware of the dry heat pooling in her throat. "What do you mean?" The room felt electrified, the air thick with unspoken words and lingering touches, as Mara watched Thorn with an intensity that burned hotter than the dimly lit bulbs overhead. She was acutely aware of the way his gaze flickered to her lips, then back to her eyes, as if assessing whether he could trust himself. Each moment stretched between them like a taut string, a heart-stopping melody of anticipation waiting to snap. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, his voice a gravelly whisper heavy with implications that made her veins sing with a new kind of life. Mara nodded, unable to find her words, because what was there to express? That she was both exhilarated and terrified, that she craved him like the very air in her lungs. Instead, she took a step forward, her own need pulling her to the precipice of their desires. The world outside her door faded, the shadows of her life before Thorn, a life of rigid plans and disappointing realities, seemed insubstantial, almost laughable in comparison to the promise that crackled between them. "Where are we going?" she managed to ask, the question hovering with an air of innocence that belied the heat thrumming through her. "Somewhere we can be ourselves," he replied, a sly smile curling at the corners of his mouth. "Somewhere we can explore everything we've kept in the dark." He extended his hand towards her, and without hesitation, she took it. The moment their fingers met, a surge of energy pulsed between them, melding skin and spirit, and igniting something deep inside her that had long lain dormant. Outside, the rain drummed softly on the pavement, muffling the world away as they descended the staircase of her apartment building and stepped into the night. The streetlights cast their glow over Thorn's features, revealing the seductive sharpness of his jaw and the sullen depth of his eyes. Chapter 10. Crossing boundaries, Mara's pulse raced as she took a tentative step toward Thorn, enveloped in an intoxicating mixture of desire and trepidation. The distance between them felt both enticingly small and impossibly vast, a chasm built on their shared secrets and the undeniable pull that drew them together, even in the shadows of uncertainty. The dimly lit apartment buzzed with energy, the flickering candlelight creating a dance of shadows that mirrored the longing in her heart. Mara's breath hissed in her throat as Thorn stepped closer, the warmth of his body radiating into the cool air that surrounded her. Every inch he came nearer ignited something wild and raw within her, a flame threatening to engulf her in its flames. "Do you trust me?" His voice was a caress, satin over steel, stirring the air with a question that hung between them like a promise. "More than you know," Mara replied, her voice barely above a whisper yet laced with certainty. She felt a surge of courage, the unyielding truth of her feelings solidifying in the heavy atmosphere. The garden of her heart, long neglected, began to bloom with wild abandon. Thorn's lips quirked into a half-smile, a flicker of understanding dancing in his eyes. He reached out, his fingers brushing against her forearm, sending a shiver spiraling through her. The warmth of his touch against her cool skin was electric, a promise of the pleasures that lay just beyond the threshold of their fears. "Good," he murmured, his gaze drifting down to where their skin connected, a magnetic force pulling them closer. "Tonight, we cross the boundaries we've built around ourselves." With a gentle tug, he pulled her into his embrace, encircling her waist with an arm that felt like home.